Good evening. My name is Bruce Gillette, and I'm the moderator of Presbyterians for Earth Care. We are very happy to have all of you joining us this evening, as well as others who will be checking out this recording later, and we hope sharing it with others as well. We'd like to begin these times together with prayer. This evening, I'd like to share with you a prayer that comes out of the Orthodox Church tradition. This is one of the founding denominations in the season of creation, and this prayer, I believe, was written for the World Day of Care, for the World Day of Prayer for the care of creation. Let us pray. We praise and bless you, O Lord, for you are King of all ages, and through Christ your Son, you made all of us that is. In the beginning of the beginning, you breathed onto the waters of creation and filled the earth with life through your vibrant spirit. The heavens declare your glory, O Lord, and the stars of the sky bring light to your darkness. You spoke, and the earth burst forth in light. You saw that it was good. You called forth creation and enlivened every creature on land and sea. You made human beings in your image and set us over the whole of the world and all of its wonders. You gave us share in your dominion and called us to till and to keep this garden, the work of your hands. As the day gives way to evening, we praise you for your manifold gifts. May our adoration now give glory to your name, so that we may serve you with faithfulness and love. May our daily care of creation show reverence for your name and reveal your saving power in every creature under heaven. We make this prayer in the name of Christ, your Son, in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Mindy, please take it away.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mindy Heidenfelter. I'm the coordinator for Presbyterians for Earth Care. And it is my pleasure this evening to introduce you to tonight's presenter on the seasons of creation. I want to introduce to you Susan Gilbert Zenka, tell you a little bit about her first. Susan grew up loving the lakes, mountains, creeks, and woods of eastern Pennsylvania and went on her first bird walk in grade school. She recently retired from 24 years in parish ministry, where she developed a passion for creation honoring Christian worship. Prior to ministry, Susan worked for 10 years as a certified public accountant. She was involved in interfaith climate issues while in ministry in Wisconsin. She founded a local interfaith group in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, and also served on the board of Wisconsin Interfaith Power and Light. Susan recently moved from central Wisconsin to Allentown, Pennsylvania, where she's enjoying exploring fiber arts in retirement while maintaining a part-time practice as a spiritual director and certified internal family systems practitioner, and also creating a biodiverse habitat garden in her new yard. And I wanted just to add to that Susan also is currently serving as the treasurer for Presbyterians for Earth Care on our steering committee. And with that, I will turn it over to the Reverend Dr. Susan Gilbert Zenka.
Thanks, Mindy. And thank you, Bruce, for that beautiful, beautiful prayer. I'm going to ask, and I think most people are doing this anyway, but I'm going to ask that folks mute because I am so easily distracted. And when your dogs bark or your children ask for attention or your phone rings, I will be distracted, just as you might be if my dogs figure out where I am and burst in, but we're hoping they don't figure that out. So while we do this, I'm going to be using, how did we decide to do this? Darn it. Okay.
Have to, there you go. Okay, you got it.
We've got slideshow. So I'm going to be talking to you while I do a slideshow to help make it more interesting than just watching me. And just want to let you know that both the slideshow and the text that I'm using as notes, I'm not going to be reading it, but I do have notes, and both of those are available if you want them later. The text will have I hope, more than I say, because that's my hope. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions at the end, or your own experiences with the season of creation, because I'm confident that some of the folks here have also have this experience with this in your church. So I remember when I first heard about the season of creation, it was 2006, and I was at the Conference on Worship, Theology, and the Arts at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. The theme of that conference that year was For the Fruit of All Creation, and I was taking a 5-day seminar in theology that was taught by Dr. Larry Rasmussen, who had recently retired from Union Theological Seminary. The title and subject of his seminar was Earth Honoring Faith. It was shortly before his book of the same title was published. You don't know this, but folks in the congregation I served know that I was incapable of preaching without holding up a book at some point. So I've now satisfied my inner need to do that. Anyway, Larry Rasmussen is a brilliant theologian and ethicist, and has been long active in the field of earth honoring faith. So on the very last day, he was sharing resources with us, and he told us that in Australia, the Lutheran Church had recently begun to celebrate a new 4-week liturgical season they were calling the season of creation. So what is the season of creation? It is a liturgical season, just like Lent or Advent or Pentecost. It's usually 4 to 6 weeks long. It's usually in September. It usually follows a 3-year lectionary, 3-year cycle with its own lectionary, but it really is whatever you want to make of it in your own congregation. And we'll talk more about that. And I should say, well, here we go. Why a season of creation is the question that comes up first of all. And the first and most obvious reasons has to do with the importance of caring for God's creation. Most of the liturgical year follows the life of Jesus. We have Advent, looking forward to the birth of Jesus. We have Christmas. We have Epiphany, celebrating the visit of the Magi. We move into the season after Epiphany. We have Lent, anticipating the death of Jesus, and so on and so forth. Most of the liturgical year is all about Jesus, which makes sense. We are a Christian denomination, we're a Christian church. It makes sense that a lot of what we do has to do with Jesus, but we worship a Trinitarian God. There is still a day and season of Pentecost, celebrating the Holy Spirit. We do have Trinity Sunday, but we don't have any season celebrating God as creator. And so when the thinking about why to have such a season is the first and most obvious reason is the importance of caring for God's creation and the centrality of God's role as creator. After all, the first story in the Bible, the first 2 stories are 2 different versions of the creation of the world. Obviously, there's more to God than just the aspect of creator, but God as creator is central to how we understand God. Theologically, we are created from earth and called to serve the earth. The second creation story tells the story of the first human, Adam, who was created from the humus, the rich earth soil, or the Adamah. And in Genesis 2:14, the human is given the vocation to serve and preserve the earth, which can also be translated to till and care for the earth. But serve and preserve is also an acceptable translation, and that's our calling as human beings. So that is kind of the obvious reason to have a season of creation. The second reason has to do with the Bible as nature literature. Somebody isn't muted, and it would be probably helpful if you notice that you're not muted to go ahead and mute. The Bible is replete with nature images, and it's one of the things that was pointed out to me when I first heard about the season of creation was that in an era when more and more people are living in urban or semi we may be less familiar with natural images than in earlier times. And so it makes sense to highlight creation. A classic example of nature as metaphor is found in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. The 41st Psalm also provides a wonderful example of a nature image. As the deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. And of course, the parables of Jesus are replete with images from nature. The parable of the sower is a perfect example that arrives in 3 different gospels. Others examples might be his use talking about the birds of the air, the flowers of the field as recipients of God's care. Jesus wove the natural world into what he was saying again and again and again. Foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. I remember a time when I was horseback riding in the high desert country of Arizona with my brother, who's a horse rancher in Arizona. We were riding in an area that was mostly scrub oak bushes about 4 feet high. And we came upon a spot where in the midst of all those short scrub oaks, there was a tall green cottonwood tree, maybe 20 feet tall. And I pointed it out to my brother and asked, what's going on there? And he said, must be a spring there. Immediately, the opening verses of Psalm 1 came to my mind. Happy are those who do not follow the advice of the wicked or take the path that sinners tread or sit in the seat of scoffers, but their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law they meditate day and night. They are like trees planted by streams of water, which yield their fruit in its season, and their leaves do not wither. In all that they do, they prosper. And I understood in that moment how the psalmist was suggesting that the person who follows God's way stands out from the crowd. I understood the psalm differently in that moment than I would have had I not seen that spring-fed cottonwood tree standing tall among the scrub oak in the desert. Providing time in the church year to remember God as creator provides an opportunity to build a deeper awareness of the natural world so that church members might more fully appreciate biblical literature. A recent book by climate scientist Katherine Hayhoe suggests another reason to celebrate the season of creation. It's just true that facts don't change minds. We know that we live in an era when we don't agree on the facts. But she suggests in this book, Saving Us, that the best way to help connect with other people and influence other people is through shared interests, shared stories, shared experiences, and most often shared values. She says, when you find out what people care about and connect climate impacts directly to the values people have, they can see that caring about climate change is already integral to who they are. So how did the season of creation come about? Where did it come from? I want to tell you right up front, there are a number of versions of this story. I'm telling you the story that I heard about how it came through the Lutheran Church in Australia. But if you look around online, you can find a Catholic version of this story that talks about how it developed in the Catholic Church. You can find an Episcopal version of this story. And what that tells me is not so much that we have alternate facts, but that the Spirit of God was moving in a number of different places to bring up an awareness of the need for a season of creation. And so the way I came upon it was Professor Norman Habel was working in the Lutheran Church in Australia, and in the year 2000, introduced a 4-week celebration of biblical creation stories. Following that, in the next 3 years, he worked with the Uniting Church Commission on Mission in Melbourne to develop a full-blown season of creation. And so in 2005, the season of creation became an option for the Australian Lutheran Church. And by 2006, when I first heard about it, churches in other countries began to celebrate it, including that year, the church that I was serving at the time, Frame Memorial Presbyterian Church in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. And this is the sanctuary there. Not that year, but a later year when we had added some of the decor that came to be part of what we did. So the season of creation is usually celebrated during 4 Sundays in September. There, as I said earlier, there is a year A version, a year B version, and a year C version. This is these are the default options, but of course you don't have to do it this way. And I'll talk a little bit more later about some ways to vary it, or ways that we varied it. So this is year A. It has Forest Sunday, Land Sunday, Outback or Wilderness Sunday, and River Sunday. Year B celebrates Earth Sunday, Humanity Sunday, Sky Sunday, and Mountain Sunday. And year C, which is this year, celebrates Ocean Sunday, Fauna Sunday or Animal Sunday, Storm Sunday, and Cosmos or Universe Sunday. Beyond these texts, though, one of the truly exciting dimensions of the season of creation for me as a pastoral theologian has been to look at the theme element as a text also. And I'll discuss that in a little more detail earlier as part of sharing our own congregation's experience, or when I say our own, the congregation that I served for 15 years. That congregation, Frame Memorial Presbyterian Church, started celebrating the season of creation in September 2006, and they've celebrated it every year since, a total of 15 years while I was there. And last year, the congregation continued to celebrate it. For the first several years, we wanted to do more than the 4 weeks. And so we added 2 weeks each year and did 6 weeks every year. So these are some of the variations that we did. As you can see, we did trees in 2006. That's kind of like forest, but not exactly. We did 4 compass points in 2006, 2011. We did grasses in 2007, which was fascinating. Also that year, we did wetlands. We did eco-justice. I'd totally forgotten about that. Lake, of course, the standard seasons of creation has rivers and ocean, but lake is a different kind of water form. Did sun and moon, symbiotic relationships, desert, chaos, which I absolutely adored. People who know me well and have seen my office might understand why I was so drawn to chaos. Flora, which in 2010 was prairie. We did generations, and that was super fun. Land in 2011 and 2017, which I misremembered. 2017, when we did land, we talked about soil. We did just water as in 2012, flora and fauna together in 2016, indigenous peoples in 2019. And then I want to say a word about 2020. We all remember that 2020 was a year of enormous disruption in our culture, in the world because of COVID. And so immediately on March 15th, we began worshiping through the computer. We were worshiping remotely. And actually, we weren't doing Zoom or Facebook as many churches did. We were pre-recording elements of worship. And so in 2020, 2 of the weeks of the season of creation, I took my iPhone and went on location. So that year we were doing forest, and I chose to concentrate on mushrooms. Yes, I really actually preached an entire sermon about mushrooms, and did it while walking around the woods, hoping that I found mushrooms. I had not gone searching in advance to make sure I would find them. We did find them. And then 2 weeks later, we did River Sunday. We talked about watershed. And then in 2014, I was doing my doctoral work I have a doctorate in preaching, and I was doing a series on wellness because I was talking about clergy health. And so we related all the elements of season of creation to wellness. I don't actually remember how we tied it in on each one, but I can remember that mental health was Wilderness Sunday. So those are some of the variations that we did there. I wanted to talk still further about why we do the season of creation. And as I said above, one of the most exciting aspects of the season of creation for me as a preacher or theologian has been to explore the natural elements as additional texts or sources of revelation. My mom was a potter for 52 years. Those are her hands on the left. And she made me a communion set, on the one on the right, when I was ordained. When I use that set in worship, I always notice the marks of her hands, the grooves that her fingers left on the chalice, the pitcher, and the plate that she fashioned. So too, in the season of creation, we are looking for the marks of God on creation, finding the imprint of God revealed in creation. There is, of course, a biblical warrant for using these natural elements as additional texts. Psalm 19 tells us that the created world reveals God to us. Heaven is declaring God's glory. The sky is proclaiming his handiwork. One day gushes the news to the next, and one night informs another what needs to be known. I have to say, if the season of creation were a TV show, I think Psalm 19 would be the theme song to its opening credits. This is really undergirding the season of creation, the idea that we can see and know about God through the handiwork of creation. But that's not the only place that the Bible says that creation is an additional text. In Romans, Paul writes that ever since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, God's eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen because they are understood through the things God has made. So humans are without excuse, says Paul. Understanding nature itself as a source of revelation, as a holy text, has given me some really exciting opportunities to do theology and liturgy literally from the ground up. In our first year celebrating the season of creation, I began to take seriously the idea that the created world itself could teach me about God. I found then, and continued to find through my 15 years of celebrating the season of creation, that it profoundly impacted me as a theologian. And I honestly think, for me, this became the most powerful continuing reason to celebrate the season of creation. And I'm going to indulge in just reading a couple paragraphs from one of the sermons from that first year, the sermon on trees. It was called Out of Thin Air. And I described the process as I learned to take seriously the idea that nature was a holy text. A couple of weeks ago, I wrote then, before I began work on this sermon, I contacted Eric Singsas, who was then a professor in the University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point, UWSP's biology department. And he is an expert on tree physiology. And he shared an insight that has proven very important to me. Eric said, as far as I am concerned, the number one cool thing about trees is that they are literally made from air. Invisible CO2 enters the leaves, is made into sugars and woven into cellulose, another type of sugar. Invisible air turns into something as massive as a white pine or redwood tree. They are useful for food and shelter for us, as well as lots of other creatures. This was at the time and continues to be amazing to me. And it is really helping me understand the importance of biology and understanding theology. Trees are made of air. Trees take in the air and God transforms them in this process, bringing into being what didn't exist before: sugars, cellulose, leaves. God makes them out of something else into what they are supposed to be. And coolest of all, relationships are fundamental to creation because, as Rabbi Arthur Waskow wrote in the call to worship that we used that day, we breathe out what the trees breathe in. We breathe in what the trees breathe out. Together, we breathe each other into life. We begin to learn from trees that transformation is integral to the way God's world works. And we begin to learn that the miraculous is part of the ordinary in God's world. So perhaps God really can change human hearts. Our call to worship that day came from the writings of Rabbi Lipskow. You can see it here. And I will say, for the purposes of this presentation, much of the time, a lot of the time, I went and found source material all over the place for liturgy. Most of what I'm sharing here is what I myself wrote because it was easy to get permission from me to share it. 2 weeks after that Tree Sunday, we celebrated Wetlands Sunday. And so that's, we considered that that wetlands used to be considered useless. It used to be considered kind of non-functional land that could be concreted over, gotten rid of. But we found out as time went on that in fact, it's intensely valuable. In fact, the wetlands can be considered the lungs of the earth. And so our prayer of confession that day reflected that knowledge. And in 2009, as I told you, we celebrated Chaos Sunday. And that Sunday, we did things a little bit differently. As you can see here in the call to worship, we had people saying different things all at the same time, which felt a little chaotic. I'm not sure everybody liked it, but it was my hope that that day we would see some of the generativity that's present in, or the generative capacity present in Chaos Sunday. So that Sunday was also a jazz Sunday. So we had music that was being created in the moment. Early on, I mentioned Catherine Hayhoe's recent book, Saving Us, and her advice that the best way to reach people about the urgency of climate change is through shared values, shared interests, shared experiences. Everyone has some experience of creation, and many of the members of any church will be able to share their photos or their artistic insights in a way that can help the season of creation be a shared worship experience. So one year when we did Mountain Sunday, I shared, our bulletin cover was this photo taken by frame member Joe Larson from the top of Mount Fuji in Japan. And it was just perfect because we were talking about mountains and valleys. And here you can see that the valley is shadowed by the mountain. So we got to talk about shadow experiences as well. And I have to say a lot of the sermon was inspired by my seeing this amazing photo that Joe had taken. But the point is that the season of creation becomes a wonderful opportunity to include the experiences of others and to have others have a way to relate. If you have a sermon about trees, for example, just mentioning the experience of climbing trees or sitting under the shade of a tree for a picnic, people can relate to that, and it gives people another way of relating to God's word. So from the first year at Frame, we tried to create connection to the outdoors during the season of creation, even when we were worshiping indoors. This is the sanctuary at Frame Memorial in Stevens Point. And that sanctuary has a kind of unique communion table. You can see right there. What is not obvious there is that right here is actually a baptismal font right in the middle, integrated into the communion table. So I created a river. The first year I went out and bought 2 long yardages of fabric, this blue satin that became the underlayer, and then a sheer blue and green layer that was on top. And we brought it out of the baptismal font and then down the chancel stairs into the nave. And actually, it was usually on Communion Sunday that we had it up here like this, so that because they always celebrate communion by intinction. But on other Sundays, we had the river extended down the center aisle into the full nave. And so that year I bought a bunch of plants. I brought in some rocks from home. We found a couple of fabric trees. Bruce,
We've had a request from the participants that your microphone is close to the pages and it's distracting when they're rubbing against the mic. Thank you.
Moved it. Thank you. Gosh, I wish I'd known that earlier. Because we are almost to the end of what I wanted to actually have pages for. So 2 years later, I came upon these amazing banners by the creative, just amazing liturgical artist, Grace Cox Johnson. And she had, it's hidden behind our pictures, but there was a tree banner. And then I commissioned her to make also this sun and moon banner and this river banner, river and mountain banner. And so we added those, and those became part of the season of creation. But and the congregation there enjoyed the tradition that we had every year of bringing out these elements, but occasionally we did things entirely differently. One year, the year, I guess it was 2017, that we did soil, we brought in a bunch of burlap and a bushel basket right here in the center of soil, and borrowed an antique garden tool from someone and brought in all kinds of plant stuff, not living, thriving plants, but just things that I can't remember why we made those choices, honestly, but that was one of the things that we did there. But I just wanted to, these are just the opening comments. I really want to hear what other people have to say or what questions you have. I just want to reiterate that for me, the real excitement was discovering the created world as a revealed text, and learning to find in creation and in the various elements of creation things that revealed the work of God to me and to the people I was sharing with. And along the way, I learned all kinds of things about creation that I never knew before. I learned things I remember still on the year we did grasses, and the first year we did ocean, and I learned about the deep ocean as a different dimension than the shallows. I mean, there was just so much to learn, and it all revealed God to us. So I'm going to stop the presentation there and go back to our shared screen so that folks can share your experiences of the season of creation, or if you have questions or just things that you want to observe and discuss with each other, that would be great.
So if you want to ask your question in person, you can go to the bottom of your screen where it says reactions and raise your hand. Or if you would like to make a comment in the chat, we can be sure to read it out loud for everyone. So either way you want to do it.
Linda, or Laura, I'm sorry. Laura Barnes.
That's okay. I've been called worse things, not a problem. Susan, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm out here in Northern California near Lake Tahoe, where we're in recovery from a major wildfire. And we're really looking at repairing creation. We're looking at, planting trees and soil that is burned, huge, millions of acres of burn scar. And really just trying, because right now the new growth is beautiful, but we're surrounded by burned out trees and ash, and it doesn't feel beautiful right now. It feels in great need of repair. And so I think this season will be really good for my folks to remember how beautiful creation can be. But I'm also looking for some, I don't know, I like the chaos idea. I think that's going to be helpful, but just some kind of idea of repairing, helping creation repair itself.
I just learned of a new concept today that I had never heard of before. I learned it from my cousin, Charles Curtin, who has okay, this is a shameless plug for my cousin. He has a new book coming out called Prosilience. And I asked, we were talking about plans for a family funeral. And I said, gosh, I'm really looking forward to seeing you because I want to learn more about prosilience. Tell me about it. And he said, well, the whole idea of it actually came from Samuel Coleridge in the early 19th century. But where resilience is actually a backward-looking concept, he said, looking at how to keep on keeping on in the ways we have in the past. Prosilience is a forward-looking way of what is the new next thing. You know, a lot of us during COVID talked about we're not going back to normal, we're going to go to the new next normal. And prosilience is a concept that has to do with that. And I have just told you everything I know about prosilience that I learned from Charles this morning. But I will try to find out more from him. And if you, you know, contact me or something, I'd be happy to tell you what he sends me to, because I'll be seeing him at the end of next week. I don't know if that's a useful concept, but it strikes me as something that might fit in with your experience.
Thank you.
Hey, Bruce.
In the chat, I put links to the Presbyterians for Earth Care website. There's an excellent article by David Gambrell from our worship office, lifting up creation care hymns in the Glory to God hymnal. And I also put a link, there's a hymn writer, I think named Carolyn Winfrey Gillette, and I put a link to the collection of her creation care hymns too. Both of these obviously can be used beyond the September to October season time period, but maybe sprinkled throughout the year to really keep the theme going with our members.
Yes, and I forgot that I did have one more slide that had to do with resources, and that those resources will be available on the Presbyterians for Earth Care website, but among others, and I listed Carolyn's website there and her hymns. There is also a book called The Season of Creation that's written by Norman Habel, David Rhodes, and Paul Santmeyer that has a lot about, it not only has commentary on all the sort of standard creation, season of creation themes, but it has some interesting work at the beginning on just creation, creation honoring worship. Yeah, Jim.
Thank you. I've put a comment on chat about how, similar to how trees build, tree substance is built from carbon dioxide, likewise plants build sugars from carbon dioxide, and then furthermore, they transmit it through their roots to enrich the microorganisms in the soil nearby. In turn, those microorganisms can gather minerals in forms that the plants can take up, and they help in other ways. Mycorrhizal roots, mycorrhizal fungi transmit signals among plants, facilitating the community of plants. So a big reason why it's important to help impart all this knowledge now is that soil regeneration is being spoken of for the next farm bill. And if you watch a video like Kiss the Grant, it will be seen that we have a few years to change our practices about soil care. Otherwise, we will no longer be able to grow enough food for humanity, unless we really gin up stuff like hydro raising or something. But we need, furthermore, that enriched soil can help the climate by holding more water, and that water in the soil can help provide a more temperate and moderate rain cycle, so that can be a lessening of storms and so on. So there's so much information about that's really crucial for the voting public to begin to understand. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and it's really important for people to understand and to hear that the science of how the earth exists and is an interrelated large organism is a God-given gift. And you know, for people in our pews to understand that this isn't somehow separate from our worship and from our faith, it's integral to our faith. Yeah, thank you for that, Jim. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of following up on what Jim introduced, because part of what I was going to say is, for me, I've been working on trying to put together a intergenerational class or whatever in the fall dealing with environment. And I'm kind of coming in from more of a perspective of the interrelationships and what Jim was talking about between the plants and the soil and the microorganisms. Those are all very critical and they're all necessary. And what makes soil important is that it's actually more living than mineral, in that regard. But it's the interrelationships that I think are very important. And for me, that's part of also something it teaches us about God, is the need for those interrelationships. And what my original, and I'm still working on it, but my initial idea is to introduce people to how they impact the environment on a watershed basis. And then some of the things we've been doing in our church, which is growing native plant gardens, is to have them start to observe that. But I think that's one of the things. I love the different themes that you have, but I think it's my mind starts thinking, how do we tie in those interrelationships? Because those are very important.
Well, those interrelationships are what I talked about most on Mushroom Sunday, which was actually Forest Sunday, but I'm always going to think of it as Mushroom Sunday.
I have some themes I can share. I can't find the raise my hand button.
Hey, I'm glad that you just spoke up, Sarah. I've been reading it.
Yeah, so I need to go to my Word doc so I can read it. So we started out with the themes that you shared at the beginning: the sky, rivers, water, air, that kind of thing. But in 2019, starting then, we've done a set of themes, and I just wanted to share them because it might inspire somebody. We followed the book Grounded by Diana Butler Bass in 2019. Where is God? Dirt. Where is God? Water. And where is God? Air are the 3 Sundays that we did. And we used her book as sort of the theological grounding for what we were doing that year. And then in 2019, we got a theme from the Scottish season of creation. It was called Passing the Planet On, and this was the year of the pandemic, and we focused a lot on children and having children on the screen because we were doing it virtually. Passing the planet on, passing the gift of wisdom, the gift of integrity, and the gift of hope. And we connected those to creation, obviously. And then in 2021, we did a series on It's Not All About Us, finding our place in creation. And we used the Noah story and how in the Noah story, God saved not just the people, but all the animals and all that. And then in Job, the speech that God gives to Job about what the humans' place is in creation. And then in Revelation, that was the 3rd week, seeing that the vision that's expressed in Revelation is talking about transformation of earth, not just going to heaven. And this year in 2022, we looked at Laudato Si, which is the Catholic version of Season of Creation. And we're using the theme of the burning bush, listen to the voice of creation, looking at the burning bush story as a story of creation speaking for justice. And then another story, which I can't remember, I've been trying to remember it, speaking for another theme, which I can't remember. And then the third one is the story of the lilies of the field and creation speaking about care. And the themes from Laudato Si are focusing on 3 parts: advocacy, sustainability, and prayer. I have that all on a sheet. I can try to post it in the chat. It might be kind of long.
Could you email it to PEC? We could include it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do what?
Workshop.
Send it, email it to Presbyterians for Earth Care.
Okay.
And then it could just be added to some of the material on the webpage.
Yeah. Before I do that, I may try to find the web links for where we got our ideas.
Oh,
Even
that's
better.
even better.
Yeah. The Diana Butler Bass book is not a web link, it's a book, but yeah, people can get hold of that. So.
And I love your ideas and how they show so many ways to adapt the season of creation in ways that make sense in your setting.
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, and every year we've wanted to include actions, sort of like stewardship season, that everybody needs to, figure out what they're going to do. And this year we're doing advocacy and specifically trying to figure out what kinds of advocacy is needed in September when we're ready to do this. So
Yeah, Jim Turner has put into the chat some actions that we can take in caring for our church grounds. And yeah, thank
I
you.
apologize. I meant to turn my video on before I started speaking.
I see you now.
I forgot.
I can apologize again for having laid the papers that my notes were on top of the microphone. I'm really sorry about that. I'm not experienced in doing webinars. More comments, more experiences that others have had with the season of creation, or questions that you have about it? Go ahead,
Susan?
Bruce. Yeah.
I'm grateful for people doing things in the area of creation care at every level. And for some churches, 4 weeks committed to any theme can be overwhelming initially. What I think can be helpful sometimes is start with the 1-day World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation. And there are resources for that in particular, but do that one and then use that in the future as a springboard for the month. And then if you're really good, you're like Susan and add on a couple of weeks in addition to the 4 weeks and you get up to 6. But I do think, if you have to start small, that's fine. You can also consider doing that event ecumenically. Since the Catholics, the Lutherans, the Episcopalians, the Methodists, many different traditions are now lifting that up. And it's supposed to be on September 1st around Labor Day, not the best day for many of us. But doing something ecumenically can, there's a few people from this church, a few people from this church, and it builds momentum. And then if you can lead from a worship service to an event outside, if the season is good for your time of year to plant trees or pick up trash or do whatever, worship at its best always leads us out into God's creation and to faithful acts there. So just
And one thing that you can do outside that I forgot to mention is a blessing of the animals service. And there may be plenty of people in your congregation who don't necessarily relate to creation care, but have a beloved dog or cat that they want to bring in for a blessing. So we did that 2 or 3 of the years that we did. We didn't do it every year, but that was another way to connect with some of the people for whom it wasn't a natural fit. And it was fun.
And that is now, a service of that is now in the Presbyterian new edition of the Book of Common Worship. So you have a officially approved Presbyterian service to bless the animals. And we had a webinar on that last fall, and I'll put the link for that in the chat as well.
The other thing I forgot to mention in terms of resources, and this is one of the reasons that we shrank it from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, was we decided to use a lectionary-based Sunday school curriculum at that time, and we were using Woodlake Publishers' Seasons of the Spirit, and they had an option to go with the Season of Creation for 4 weeks. And so we just decided to, because part of the reason for a lectionary-based Sunday school was to reinforce in Sunday school what was happening in worship, we decided to then limit it to 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks. So that was a useful resource. Anyone else? Thank you so much, folks, for coming and just for being interested. Yeah, Luann.
No, I don't want to hold you up. I just thought of something, we try to do different, my main career was in ecology education before I went to seminary. So I'm always kind of trying to bring things like this into worship, and I'm very excited about this idea of a whole season. But back in seminary, we were trying to plan a worship service related to creation, and one of the things we ended up doing was making seed bombs with native plant seeds, which is quite messy, right? But I mean, that's a really fun activity that you can involve all ages in, right? And creating these seed balls that maybe you hold on to them and then wait till the spring to then launch them around or whatnot. But it might be a fun activity for the fall.
Absolutely. And some folks just love messy things. It
Yeah,
might be a
exactly.
perfect thing for Chaos Sunday.
Right.
Yeah, and Bruce points out in the chat that our next webinar coming up is a wonderful webinar on building resilience, empowering tools for reducing burnout, stress, and trauma. And that's going to be on Tuesday, July 26th, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And I believe the registration for that will be live tomorrow. Am I correct about that, Mindy?
Right, we'll have registration open for that first thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would add, we really do appreciate you registering. If you're not on our email list, you are, since you did register. And Mindy will be sending out a link to this video sometime in the next few days, right, Mindy? So you can share what you've experienced tonight with other people by sharing that. It'll be posted on YouTube. So don't delete automatically emails from Presbyterians for Earth Care. We are also, for those of you who are active in the Presbyterian Church, working to change some things that are being proposed at the General Assembly this coming week. Currently, there is recommendations to support fracking and oil pipelines and a very slow divestment process, and we hope to provide you with an alternative vision that you might share with friends who are commissioners to the General Assembly.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, I don't
Hi.
know who is saying it.
I don't think I have a video available. My name is Barb. I'm from Palmer, Alaska.
Mhm.
And I was part of the big conference that happened several years ago when we brought people up to experience Alaska. It was wonderful. And so I just think this is wonderful. I've been a recycler and an earth care person basically my whole life. And I just think this is so important. And I just love the green Bible where everything is highlighted in green. That's, got to do with earth care and the earth. And I just think this is a wonderful idea. And please, if you all hear about Pebble Mine, they're trying to build a huge gold and mineral mine right smack dab in the middle of the world's largest salmon spawning grounds in Bristol Bay. So if you hear about it, say no. Please just say no to Pebble Mine. It's not like you guys have a say in any other state, but it is working its way through. It's been 10 years that we've been fighting against it. There's a lot of people against it and there's a lot of big money behind it. So that's my plug for today is say no to Pebble Mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks for sharing that. Jim, I see your hand is up.
Yes, at the beginning of your talk, you mentioned Larry Rasmussen, and I didn't get the name of the book that you had said that he had written.
It's he's written two, many, but these two, one is Earth Honoring Faith and the other one, I can't see because I'm wearing my Zoom glasses.
Google it on Amazon.
Earth Honoring Faith is the recent one, and my books are, oh, nope, I can't see it. Earth
that's
Community,
okay.
Earth Community something something. It's too far for me. Earth Community are the first two words, and that was an earlier book, but fabulous. Anyway, yeah, Larry Rasmussen is a wonderful, faithful, earth honoring ethicist. Nelson asks in the chat whether the slides and text are available. Yes, Mindy has them and you can use them. The text is available as a PDF. Use it, share it, do whatever you want with it. Yeah, and the slides are also.
I will, so on our website, there will be a page for this workshop. It'll contain the link to the YouTube video. I'll put the slideshow there and the notes and the names of some of the books. I'll put everything on the same page. And then I will make sure all of you get the link to that page where everything will be all together.
Yeah, that way, if you want to go, I hope, if you want to go present to your worship committee why you should have a season of creation, there it is, all done, and you can use your own words and play with it however you want to.
And Susan, you're available for Zoom in preaching. Is that right? That you could?
Oh, I'm actually totally available for any earth honoring preaching. That is the only pulpit supply I now allow myself to do. But I don't anticipate anybody asking me to do that. But boy, I sure loved the season of creation. That was exciting stuff. So thanks all for your interest. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being connected to Presbyterians for Earth Care. I leave it to Bruce and Mindy to say any closing remarks.
Well, we're very grateful to you, Susan, and we thank you very much. I know you're juggling a lot these days, and to make time for everyone to do this is a real gift. And the best way we can show our thanks is sharing this with other pastors and worship planners. We need to sprinkle this out, because the best way to reach people in churches is through worship, and making those connections between the concerns of the world and faith it helps our churches grow. So please do that. And Mindy, thanks for doing all the tech support and making this happen, because Susan's got great ideas, but you also bring the skills to this evening as well. So thank you all. We really appreciate you being with us.
Thank you all so much.
God bless everybody. Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody. This was great.
Good night.
Good night.
I don't know who it was who was talking. At one point, you may have seen me mute. The dogs found me and came in panting loudly. Apparently they'd been outside. They always have to come and tell me when, we're home now, we're back. They were very excited. So if you saw me sort of gesturing, that was because of my crazy dogs, but they've gone now. They found this not actually terribly interesting.
Susan, it was excellent content. It was
Oh, you were still on there.
more. So thank you.
Sarah Wins, who was also on, was the person who came to our church and helped to do a workshop, which got a few of us together. So you never know how far you all are reaching, because she's in Blacksburg and we're in Roanoke, and somebody was on there from Alaska. So don't stop doing what you're doing, because you are reaching far and wide. So
Thank you, Harriet.
We we'll turn the recording back on, and you can do the commercial for our appeal to support these efforts.
that's